Hello, I'm Hannah, and I am joined here with Dr. Bob Schooley, our resident scholar here at Purpose and Performance Group. And today we're talking about accountability, and especially ensuring accountability when we work with our team and with our clients. So, Dr. Bob, how do you define accountability?
Thanks, Hannah. It's good to see you. Uh, to me, accountability is kind of the cousin of responsibility. And to me, when someone's accountable, they are assuming or accepting the responsibility with delivering a specific deliverable in a given time frame and a given budget. How about you, Hannah? What's a definition that works for you with regards to accountability?
Yeah, I really like the definition from the book, The Oz Principle, and that's a pretty well-known work that's been around for a while, a couple decades at least, and it's all about accountability, and they define it in that book as a personal choice to rise above one's circumstances and demonstrate the ownership necessary for achieving desired results, to see it, own it, solve it, and do it.
Yeah, that's a classic. I'm a huge fan of Oz Principle. I love their use of the word ownership in their definition. I think that's spot on. And then they have some language in there about a personal choice. Someone chooses to be accountable, chooses to be responsible. And then I love the mindset that the Oz Principle puts out or puts forward with regards to kind of that action orientation. If I see something, and I know that it needs to be addressed, accepting that accountability, responsibility to go address that. See it, own it, solve, do it, get it done. I like that kind of call to action. That's a great good job, Hannah.
Well, good job, Oz Principle, I think.
Yeah.
um, so, Bob, you mentioned earlier or in some of our conversations, we've talked about this, how accountability can have this kind of negative connotation for people sometimes. What are some of the traps that we tend to fall into when it comes to accountability?
Hannah, I think one of the kind of well, the trap. I think when we talk about assuming the responsibility for delivering a specified deliverable, the word specified, excuse me, is very important. I think a lot of times we're a little too casual in that we have a conversation about something that needs to be produced in a certain time frame and a certain budget, and we really don't get into the specifics. So that's probably for me probably the biggest, most important trap, because I think you've really got to make sure that it's well scoped, that you're on the same page and we understand what the requirements are. What you just mentioned too, I think, is another big trap with regards to kind of the whole mentality. There's kind of a negative vibe around the word accountability. Um, I really, I think you got to be careful about I think it's a little bit of a myth to say I'm going to hold someone accountable, and I like the idea of that we're inviting them. We want to get them involved in something. Um, so from my perspective, those are probably two of the bigger traps. How about you?
Yeah, no, I think you're right about when it comes to holding someone accountable, that can have that almost feeling of punishment sometime, right? You didn't do a good enough job, so now I'm going to hold you accountable. And in doing that, it's like when you hold someone, you are literally trapping them. Talk about a trap, right? And we feel like we have less agency, less personal power to make choices and act independently. And autonomy is something that's incredibly important for engagement and motivation for people to do meaningful work, to feel that psychological ownership of getting the task done. So, what are your thoughts on how we can develop that agency to hold ourselves accountable and then have, build the trust to be able to invite others to hold themselves accountable?
Yeah, that's a great question, Hannah. And, to me, trust doesn't just happen overnight. Trust is something that you build over time. And we like to talk a lot about, and we focus heavily on what we call employee experience. And literally, if you think from all the way from initial contact with somebody you're thinking about hiring, all the way through, ideally through retirement, you want to be very intentional about that process. You want to help people or include them in your conversation about your purpose, what you're trying to do, how you're going about that. So I think that just the whole idea of someone accepting or buying into accountability is so important. And I think it's a very intentional act. It's something it's a part of your culture. It's something that you pay close attention to, literally all the way from initial contact. I think it's very important to look for that when you're hiring people, as far as their experience or history, if you will, with regards to taking responsibility or being accountable. I think that's critical. So again, it's a process. It's part of that employee experience.
Yes. And I love what you touched on with the employee experience. Back to this concept of agency and ownership, I think a tip or a tactic for us to use, and something that we do as coaches and that we teach when we teach people how to coach, is the importance of asking questions, right? When I ask you a question, it triggers the problem-solving piece of the brain, and it also induces insight. And when we have insight, we have ownership of that insight, right? When I came up with the solution for how I'm going to deliver on time and under budget, and in a way that works for me, that I can hold myself to, I have more ownership of the process, and therefore I'm more likely to follow through on it, versus someone just handing it to me and saying, do it in this way, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a good note to kind of round off on. Dr. Bob, what's the bottom line here for you?
Well, the bottom line to me, Hannah, is I really love how you've kicked off this series by the fact that you started with trust, which to me is the cornerstone. That you've got to make sure that's in place. And I think it goes back to what we just talking about with employee experience. If employees come into your organization and there's a high level of trust, that leads to all sorts of good things. They feel safe. They feel they're a part of a team. Their sense of loyalty goes up dramatically. And I think their levels of responsibility and accountability go up as well when they feel that trust. So to me, accountability is really kind of the employee or the team member's opportunity to kind of tell the organization, hey, I get it. I'm on board. I love our purpose. I love the why we come into work. And probably even most importantly, I understand how what I'm working on contributes to the greater good, contributes to what we're trying to accomplish, contributes to our overall purpose. So to me, accountability, kind of the bottom line would be, accountability fuels the trust that allows us to sustain highly beneficial relationships. And I just think, well, that's the bottom line, I guess.
Well, that's a great way to close, Dr. Bob. We appreciate your insight. Thank you so much.
You bet, Hannah. Thank you.